Dear students, a very warm welcome in this video lecture. Today we begin with the fundamental concept of attitude from a management perspective. In organizational behavior, attitudes are understood as evaluative statements. This evaluation may be favorable or unfavorable toward object, people, or events. When an employee say, I like my job, they are expressing an internal evaluation that reflects how they feel about their work environment. However, attitudes are not simple reactions. They are psychologically complex because they involve deeper reasoning, experiences, and personal interpretation. For example, when individuals express their attitude toward religion, celebrities, or organizations, the response may sound straightforward, but it is shaped by multiple internal factors such as belief, emotions, and prior experiences. From a managerial standpoint, understanding attitude is crucial because employee behavior is often rooted in these evaluations. Managers must recognize that attitude influences motivation, engagement, and workplace satisfaction. Therefore, to truly understand workplace behavior, we must analyze the underlying components and properties of attitudes rather than just observing surface reactions. Moving ahead, let us understand attitude specifically in the context of management. Managerial attitude refers to a consistent mental orientation that shapes how managers interpret situations, people, and organizational challenges. Unlike temporary emotions, which change quickly, managerial attitude represents a relatively stable cognitive framework that guides judgment and strategic thinking. In practical organizational setting, attitude functions as an internal filter. Managers interpret information based on their evaluative tendencies. For instance, a proactive manager may see uncertainty as an opportunity for innovation, while a risk-averse manager may perceive the same situation as a potential threat. These differences illustrate how managerial attitudes directly affect decision-making process. From an academic perspective, attitude influence perceptions, prioritization of information, and behavioral responses. Because managerial decisions impact organizational performance, the attitude of leaders become a critical variable in shaping outcomes such as problem solving, employee morale, and organizational adaptability. Researchers commonly explain attitudes through three interconnected components: cognition, affect, and behavior. The cognitive component refers to beliefs or thoughts about a situation. For example, when an employee states, my pay is low, this represents a cognitive evaluation based on perception of reality. The second component is affect, which refers to emotional reaction. In this case, the employee may feel anger or dissatisfaction about compensation. Emotional responses are powerful because they shape how individuals experience organizational situations. The third component is behavioral intention. This involves the action tendency resulting from cognition and affect. For instance, the employee might decide to search for another job. From a management perspective, the three components are closely linked. Cognition often triggers emotional responses, and emotions influence behavior. Understanding this tri-component model helps manager predict workplace actions. When managers recognize employee beliefs and emotions, they can address concerns before behavioral consequences, such as resignation or conflict occurs. To deepen conceptual clarity, several scholars have defined attitude in different ways. Byrne described attitude simply as likes and dislikes, emphasizing the evaluative nature of human responses. Angel expanded this understanding by defining attitude as an overall evaluation that guides consistent favorable or unfavorable reaction toward an object or alternative. Gordon Allport provides a more comprehensive definition by describing attitude as a learned predisposition. This highlights that attitudes are not innate, they develop through experience and social interaction. In management studies, this idea is important because organizational culture, leadership, and training programs can shape managerial and employee attitudes over time. Cognitively oriented social psychologists further define attitude as an enduring organization of motivational, emotional, perceptual, and cognitive processes. These definitions reflect the complexity of human psychology and explain why attitude strongly influences behavior in organizational setting. Collectively, these definitions show that attitude is both psychological and behavioral, making it a central concept in management theory. Now, let us distinguish between personal attitude and managerial attitude. Personal attitude originates from individual beliefs, values, and life experiences. It influences behavior in everyday social situations. Managerial attitude, however, is shaped by personal roles, leadership responsibilities, and organizational expectations. A key challenge for manager is balancing personal preferences with professional obligation. For example, a manager may personally prefer working independently, yet organizational success may require a collaborative approach. In such cases, managers must regulate personal biases to ensure objective decision making. From an academic viewpoint, personal attitude is subjective, whereas managerial attitude must align with ethical standards, accountability, and organizational goals. This distinction is critical for leadership effectiveness because professional decisions must prioritize collective organizational interest rather than individual preferences. Understanding these differences help managers to develop emotional intelligence and professional maturity within the workplace. In management, attitudes influence how managers motivate employees, allocate resources, and handle challenges. Positive attitudes such as openness, accountability, and resilience support a productive work environment. On the other hand, negative attitudes may create resistance to change and poor communication. Managers who value employee development often invest in training, which improve both individual performance and organizational outcomes. Now, attitude is considered an intangible management resources because it shapes organizational culture and leadership effectiveness without being physically visible. Managers with adaptive and learning oriented attitudes encourage innovation and continuous improvement. Since attitude influences perception and decision making, it indirectly affects employee morale, productivity, and even brand reputation. Now, managerial attitudes play a role in all core functions of management. Planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. The way managers interpret opportunities and challenges determine how effectively these functions are performed. A constructive attitude improves coordination and strategic thinking across the organization. Planning depends on how managers view the future. An optimistic attitude supports innovation and long-term vision, but excessive optimism may lead to unrealistic goals. Attitudes also shape risk perception. Some managers treat uncertainty as an opportunity, while others focus on stability. Effective planning requires balancing confidence with logical analysis. In organizing, managerial attitude affects delegation and authority. Managers who trust their teams are more willing to delegate tasks, which improve efficiency and empowerment. Attitude toward hierarchy also shape organizational structure. Leaders who value collaboration may encourage flexible structure, while authority-focused managers may maintain rigid hierarchies. Now, let us understand how managerial attitude influences the leading function of management. Leadership effectiveness depends on a manager's mindset toward people and performance. A supportive and inclusive attitude creates a positive team climate where employees feel comfortable sharing ideas. Empathy helps manager understand employee perspective and build trust. In contrast, a controlling attitude may reduce creativity and create fear-based environments. Leaders who listen during organizational changes often gain a stronger commitment from their teams. Next, we examine the role of attitude in the controlling functions. Controlling involves monitoring performance and taking corrective action. Managers with a learning-oriented attitude treat feedback as a chance to improve rather than as criticism. Balancing monitoring with trust is important. Excessive control may reduce autonomy, while a trust-based approach increases responsibility and motivation among employees. Now we focus on how leadership attitudes shape power dynamics within organizations. Leadership attitude influences how managers use authority and interact with team members. It affects leadership style, communication pattern, and organizational culture. A positive leadership attitude supports collaboration, while rigid attitudes may create distance between leaders and employees. Here we compare two important leadership attitudes, authoritative and participative. An authoritative attitude emphasizes centralized decision making and strict control, which can be useful during crisis situations. A participative attitude encourages employee involvement and strengthens commitment. Modern management generally prefers participative approaches because they improve innovation and trust within the teams. Now, let us look at the servant leadership perspective from an attitude viewpoint. Servant leadership focuses on supporting and empowering employees rather than dominating them. Managers adopting this attitude prioritize ethical conduct, employee development, and long-term organizational well-being. This approach builds mutual respect and contributes to sustainable performance. Now we discuss managerial attitude toward diversity and inclusion in modern organization. In global workplaces, managerial attitude toward diversity influences fairness and innovation. Leaders who value inclusion create environments where individuals from different backgrounds can contribute effectively. A positive diversity attitude improves workplace harmony and support better problem solving through varied perspective. In this part, we focus on managerial humility as an important leadership attitude. Managerial humility involves recognizing personal limitations, seeking feedback, and appreciating team contributions. Leaders with humble attitude encourage open communication and continuous learning. When managers acknowledge mistakes, they build trust and motivate employees to share ideas and challenges honestly. Next, let us understand how attitude affects workplace communication. Communication effectiveness depends on managerial attitude toward listening, collaboration, and understanding. Attitude shapes how messages are delivered and interpreted within the organization. Positive communication attitude strengthens coordination and reduces misunderstandings. Here we examine the importance of a listening attitude in managerial communication. Active listening reflects respect and openness toward employee viewpoints. Managers who listen carefully create transparent communication channels and minimize workplace conflicts. Employees feel valued when their opinions are heard, which improve relationship and team cohesion. In this slide, we explore how managerial attitudes shape perception filters. Perception filters are mental framework through which managers interpret information. They are influenced by past experience, culture, and personal beliefs. While perception helps in quick decision making, it may also create biases. Managers must remain aware of these filters to avoid misjudgment and encourage fair evaluation. Now let us compare constructive and defensive communication attitudes. Managers with constructive attitudes focuses on problem solving and collaboration. They encourage open dialogue and use supportive language. Defensive communication occurs when managers react emotionally or treat feedback as personal criticism, which may lead to conflict. Developing a constructive communication approach helps maintain professionalism and team harmony. Now we will understand how managerial attitude influences conflict resolution in organizations. Conflict is a natural part of organizational life and managerial attitude determine whether it becomes productive or destructive. Managers who view conflict as an opportunity encourage dialogue and negotiation. In contrast, avoidance-oriented attitude may allow issues to grow. Effective managers balance assertiveness with empathy to ensure fair and respectful solutions. In this slide, we focus on how managerial attitude can be measured and diagnosed. Modern organizations do not rely on assumptions about attitude. They assess it systematically. Measuring attitudes helps managers understand behavioral patterns and leadership effectiveness. Combining psychological assessment with managerial observation provide a clear picture of workplace dynamics and areas needing improvement. Next, let us discuss self-assessment as a method to evaluate managerial attitude. Self-assessment involves reflective practices such as leadership inventories, journals, and behavioral questionnaires. These tools helps managers to identify strengths and biases. Regular reflection promote accountability and help align managerial behavior with organizational goals. Here we examine the concept of organizational attitude audits. An attitude audit is a structured evaluation of employee perception and managerial behavior. Organization may use survey, interview, or group discussion to identify trends related to morale and workplace climate. Early identification of dissatisfaction allow leaders to take corrective actions before problem escalate. In this slide, we explore climate survey and importance of feedback loop. Climate survey collect information about employee experience related to leadership, communication, and culture. Feedback loops ensure that collected data leads to actionable strategies. Managers who remain open to feedback strengthen transparency and trust within the organizations. Finally, let us discuss behavioral observation as a technique for understanding managerial attitudes. Behavioral observation focuses on real workplace actions such as communication style, decision making, and conflict handling. Unlike self-reports, observation examine actual behavior, helping managers to identify gaps between intended attitudes and real performance. This support affect leadership development. Now we move toward contemporary challenges that require adaptive managerial attitudes. Modern organizations operate in dynamic environments, and managers must adjust their attitude to handle uncertainty and changes. Strategic thinking and flexibility become essential because rigid attitudes may reduce organizational adaptability. In this slide, we discuss how attitude helps manager to handle a multi-generational workforce. Workplace include employees from different age groups with diverse expectations and work styles. Managers need flexible and respectful attitude to bridge generational differences. Such an approach promotes collaboration and mutual understanding within teams. Next, let us understand the importance of a global mindset in managerial attitude. Globalization requires managers to value culture awareness and adaptability. Positive cross-culture attitude improve communication and reduce misunderstandings in international business environments. Managers who respect diversity strengthen organizational effectiveness. Here we examine how managerial attitude connect with sustainability and social responsibility. Organizations today are expected to act ethically towards society and the environment. Managers with responsible attitude promote sustainable practice and long-term thinking. Such attitude influence strategic decisions and organizational reputation. In this final content slide, we focus on balancing profitability with employee well-being. Managers must maintain financial performance while supporting employee need. A balanced attitude recognizes both economic objective and human value. This approach contributes to sustainable growth and a healthier organizational culture. Let us briefly recap the key ideas discussed throughout this lecture on attitude from a management perspective. Attitude influences managerial thinking, decision making, leadership style, and communication. We discussed components of attitude, differences between personal and managerial outlook, and its role in planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Leadership attitudes such as participative style, humility, and servant leadership support positive organizational culture. Communication, conflict resolution, and assessment tools helps manager to develop effective attitudes. Finally, modern challenges like diversity, globalization, sustainability, and employee well-being highlight the strategic importance of managerial attitude in contemporary organizations. So this is all about today's lecture, dear students. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.